Shalom everyone and Chodesh Tov. We are in the month of Tamuz. What do we have to learn about Tamuz? Tamuz is a special month because there's some issues about the month of Tamuz you can't find about any other month. So let's start when we would like to understand the astrological meaning of a Hebrew month. There are a few ways to get into it, but the first one is learning it from a very simple Kabbalistic tree of life study of Rabbi Azakloria. And how do we go about it? How do we go about it? We start, first of all, with the structure of the year. 4 seasons. And why 4 seasons? Yud, K, Vav, K. Okay? Which means Yud is the spring, Hey, the upper Hey, is corresponding to the summer. Vav is the fall, autumn, and the last Hey is the winter. Now, the month of Cancer, the month of Tamuz, is the first month of the summer. Okay? Now, if we have Yud K Vav K, that applies also to the 4 elements. The Yud is fire, because Chokhmah is fire, pure energy. The Hey, summer, is water. Now the Vav is air, and the last Hey, winter, is earth. So the summer is the upper Hey, and it is water. What does it mean? All 3 signs of the summer, which are Cancer, Leo, and Virgo, they are basically at the core water. What does mean water? Water means sharing, sensitivity, emotionality. Basically, that's the summary. Which means we have people of the month of Cancer, Tamuz, that are into sharing. They're very, very big givers, very emotional and so on. And we have the Leo, which is also, they have a different kind of a sharing. If the sharing of the Cancer is a motherly sharing, the sharing of the Leo is the father kind of sharing. I'm the one who says over here, gives over here the advices, and I'm here the one who gives the tone. Okay? And also the emotional Leo without drama, that's not a Leo. Okay? So that's the water aspect of the Leo. Also in the Virgo, again, Virgos are very much into sharing and sensitivity. That's why they're very great caregivers. In any kind of nurses, giving care, giving and sharing, that's, you see a lot of the people of Virgo, they have the tendency to have occupations like this, of being in the aspects of sharing, or they can share with you information. Too much information, according to the opinion of other signs. Okay, so if we're talking about that, then we know that the base of the 3 signs of the summer is water, and as we said, giving and sensitivity. That's about sharing. Okay, now, of every 3 signs, of every zodiac sign, we can divide it again to right, left, center. Okay? Right, left, and center. The first one is always right. The second is left. And the third is center. Right, left, and center are also water, fire, air, in that order. Okay? Because right column is water, chesed. Left column is gvura. Okay? Gvura, fire. And the third one is the central column, tiferet, air. And that gives us that the zodiac sign of Cancer is water at the core, because it is the first month of the summer. Now, because it is the first month, it is also water of the water signs. Okay? And in general astrology, it's also a water sign. That's the external aspect. So if we look about the 3 aspects that every sign has of elements, the season, the place in the season, and the place in the year, the month of Cancer is the only one that it's the same element of all three aspects. It is water, water, water. Which means, if we are talking about sensitivity, we are talking about the month of Cancer as extra, extra, extra sensitive. Okay? Emotionality, extra, extra, extra emotional. So if we look at even the name of the sign, which is Cancer, Cancer basically means a crab. Now, if you ever seen a crab walking, a crab never walks forwards. They walk sideways, either to the right or to the left. Which means when somebody has this tendency of extreme emotional behavior, then it goes either to the right or to the left. Very extreme. Okay? So we have here extra sensitivity, and therefore we have two meanings what you can do with extra sensitivity. On the physical materialistic side, we know that people of the sign of Cancer, doesn't matter how much talent they have, it's like they have a big hole in which all the value they have is running away. Which means their oversensitivity can derail them from any program, can destroy any vision, any dream, because the moment you are oversensitive and you're over-emotional, then you are overreactive, and that means that you have the tendency to fall so much that basically that can destroy your life. So any person who has a strong influence of the sign of Cancer in his zodiac chart, that means that's a hurting, painful spot. Unless the person can turn that sensitivity into sensitivity to others. What is the problem with people of the month of Cancer? They are born in the month of Tamuz. The problem is when you're oversensitive and all of that sensitivity is concentrated inwardly, that means you're busy all day long feeling, what do I feel? What do I feel? What do I feel? And we know, Kabbalistically speaking, the moment, this is a red sign, big red light, because the moment somebody is very busy with themselves, this is the end. What I mean the end? What is that we want? Every human being wants to connect to the light. Every human being wants to connect to the bliss of the Creator. Now the bliss of the Creator, if you want to explain it in simple word, this is the endless. Now, the problem is that similarities attract. Which means, if you want to connect to the endless, do you want to connect to the endless light, you have to vibrate on the same frequency. But if you are vibrating on the frequency of me, 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 I'm hurting, I feel like this, I'm excited, I'm upset, I'm hateful, I'm resentful, all of that. What do I feel every second? That moment that you are self-centered, you are finite. You become the end of the road. Because everything that happens, it's all centered about you. So, being finite, being the spot of the end of the road and connecting to the endless, this is an oxymoron. Doesn't happen. So you can find a lot of people of the sign of Cancer that they are the epitome of disasters. Epitome of disasters. Everything is into like disaster, emotional, whatever we just explained. Now, of course, every curse, it's not a curse of its own, it can become a great blessing. Which means the moment the Cancer sign is focusing their extra sensitivity on others, and especially on a spiritual way to help and care for others on a genuine level, the result is miraculous. Why? Because they become clairvoyants. They have the ability to care for others, to know what is that the other needs in a very, like, it's almost metaphysical. Like it's beyond being a good psychologist. So therefore, the moment you have somebody who is a Cancerian, but they really learned to care for others in a selfless way, they can be successful in a magical, illogical way. Why? For instance, somebody from the sign of Cancer as a boss that is showing motherly love to their workers gets their loyalty like no other boss. They'll work for you, they'll be for you, they'll support you, they'll be behind you. Loyalty is a very important asset. So a boss of the sign of Cancer who has the spiritual touch, he can have an amazing magical influence over his workers. Just get out of feeling yourself and be busy feeling others. Okay? Now, what else do we learn about that sign is, as we said, the water aspect gives also extremity. Okay? Because the same thing, you have in those emotional waves, extreme emotional sensitivity can get you become, if you're not spiritual, very unstable emotionally. And that's why in some languages, when you want to say that somebody is psychologically unstable, you say lunatic, right? You're using the word moon sick, right? Why? The planet, not just that the Cancer signs are having that extreme emotional issue just from the aspect of Tree of Life Sphirot study, but we know that the ruling planet of Cancer is the moon. And the moon also symbolizes mood swings. And here again, it's not by mistake that you can say that somebody is emotional imbalance, he's moon sick. He's lunatic. Luna is the moon, right? In Latin. So, and what do we see about the moon? You have a dark side, you have a light side. You have a full moon, you have a dark moon. So, and the moon is always going from being dark to light every month. There's a cycle. So here we have the moon is a symbol for cyclical swings. Okay, also you have a daily cycle, which is the tide, high tide and low tide. And again, the tide is affecting what? Water, not earth, the water on the planet. Okay? So again, we see about the connection between the moon and water and changes and those cycles of emotional swings. Okay? That's why a lot of the people of the sign of Cancer, they're also not just lunatic, but they have also the mood swings, which is manic depressive. Either they're terribly excited or they go into being terribly upset and depressed. Okay? This is the basic energy they need to work with. More than that, if you look at the moon, as we said, you have the dark side and the light side. So that's why they have the tendency to go with extremes. Like for a lot of people of the sign of Cancer, There is a problem, emotional problem, because they can't understand the grays. They can understand either right or wrong. Okay? Light or darkness, good or evil. Like on the moon, there's no grays. It's light and dark. And, you know, when you're very emotional, it's very hard to understand and to agree that people live in the grays. Which means, there's, as we know, the expression from the King Solomon that says, there's no righteous person who will do only good without sinning. Which means you can't have somebody who's only righteous. They don't belong on this planet. And also, it's almost impossible to find people that are only evil. Even, as the Zohar says, sometimes you find righteous people behave like evil, and sometimes you see evil people behaving like righteous. So you cannot, it's very hard to be judgmental against people because you're missing the point. The point on earth, being human, is not to be right or wrong. The point is transformation. And as I said many times, we're not here to be right. We're here to be the light. And we're not, and a lot of cancer, it's always like an argument about what's right. It's not important what's right. And people who are busy being right, they're very negative because they are focusing on the wrong aspect of life. And especially because when you have this tendency to look for the perfection, you know, like the full, perfect moon. This is only one little time out of the month that the moon is full and perfect. Most of the month, the moon is going through its process. Same is with people. So that means also what I usually say, we are not here to be perfect, we're here to perfect. The moment you're perfect, you have nothing to look for over here. And that means, like the moon, what part of your life you'll be perfect? Okay? If you're perfect, you have no life. Because life, how do you define life? Says the Zohar very clearly, transforming bitter into sweet, darkness into light. So if you don't refer to the bitterness or to the darkness as opportunities to perfect, or you just see it as like the ultimate evil, and you're looking for the ultimate good, this is not realistic. And basically you can't live your life when your idealism is so not realistic. And that adds up to the emotional instability and to become not very unpractical. Okay? So this is about just the superficial level of the sign. Now, there's another aspect, which is the combination, or let's say the permutation of the name of God, which is connected to this month. Okay, so first of all, it says, I'm reading right now from Bnei Sachar, from the great Kabbalist Rabbi Tzvi Melech of Dinov, some 200 years ago. So he's saying the permutation of the Tetragrammaton that is running, that is controlling the month of Tamuz, is Hey, Vav, and Hey, and Yud. Hey, Vav, Hey, and Yud. Yotzei Pasuk, that comes, which is, if you notice, this is the Youdkevitch, backwards. Okay? That's exactly backwards. Therefore, we know if Youdkevitch forwards, that means bliss, happiness, positive energy. It's like the energy of life flows perfectly. Vav Ku, which is the opposite, that shows a disaster. Judgment. Okay? How do we know? We see it very clearly because, you know, as we learned, the Tikkunei Zohar, teaches us about those permutations, and the Tikkunei Zohar says each one of these 12 permutations of the 12 months has a verse from the 24 books of the Bible, the Tanakh, that the initials or the last letters of 4 of the words comes to that sequence, and that shows about that sequence. Now, what is the verse that symbolizes Kei-Vav Kei-Yud? It comes from the book of Esther, chapter 5, verse 13, what Haman is saying before he gets to decide to kill or to hang Mordechai, and he says, V'chol ze einenu shoveli. This doesn't worth it. This doesn't worth it. I can't enjoy it. And he says it from the purpose to kill Mordechai. So, ze, the last letter is Hey, einenu, last letter is Vav, shove, last letter is A, li, last letter is Yud. Kei, Vav, Kei, Yud. Okay? So he's bringing this judgment, and he wants to create a finite blow to the Jewish hope for life by killing Mordechai a year before the decree of killing all the Jews. So he goes to the king, but meanwhile, Esther, the Queen Esther, she's coming to the king, and she says, and he asks, what is, and the king is asking Esther, what do you want? And Esther says, Queen Esther says to the king, Yavo Hamelech veHaman Hayom, which is grammatically a bit awkward. What does it mean? I'm inviting the king and Haman to my place for a party. Okay? But she says, Yavo, Yud, Hamelech, Hey, veHaman, Vav, Hayom, Hey. She reverses Haman's letters from Kei Vav Kei Yud to Yud Kei Vav Kei. She reverses the judgment into bliss and opening. She opens it, but that's not an easy job because they had to fast for 3 days. She had to pray. Everybody had to pray and unite and transform, which means when we transform our negativity, then we can transform the judgment into bliss, and that will give us a different story. Okay, now, Alken, that's why he says, הנה צירוף השם של חודש תמוז, so says that בבני יששכר. That's why the permutation of the month of Tamuz, הוא למפרע, it's totally backwards, והוא מורה על דין, and it shows about judgment. What does it mean, judgment? Delay, blockage, okay, and curtain. ומצירוף זה, from this permutation, נתבע הדין על המן הרשע, from this permutation came the judgment of Haman, באומרו וכל זה אינו שווה לי. על כן שליטת הדין בזה החודש. That's why judgment controls this month. In this month, judgment is in control, and that's why this is one of the 3 months the Zohar cautions us to be really extra careful about our moves. The Zohar brings it in the book of Exodus, Parashat Shmot, the first parasha, when it speaks about the birth of Moses, and it says that as Moses is born, vatatzpineu shlosha yachim, his mother is hiding him for 3 months. Okay? So that, he was born. The Egyptians were looking for Jewish boys to kill them. Okay? She managed to hide him for 3 months, but then she couldn't anymore. She had to put him on an ark on the Nile. Okay? But there's also, that's a simplistic understanding. But the deeper understanding is that there are 3 months in the year that the Shekhinah, that the protection shield is hidden and the judgment is stronger. I'll give you what I mean that the Shekhinah is hidden. Many times you look at people, especially very young ones, like children, and you see the way they behave, and if you really watch their behavior, you realize it's a miracle they survive every day without killing themselves. Getting into too much trouble that is irreversible. So you know there's some kind of a protection. You see people driving and you just say like, that could be a devastating accident. I have no idea how that happened. Which means, Shomer Ptaim Hashem, God is keeping a kind of surveillance and guardian over his creatures. Because if that will be dependent only on our thinking, we will be, we won't survive. Most of us don't have the chance to survive. There's a protection. However, the protection is not that strong over 3 months in the year. And they're not consecutive, as the Zohar says. This is the month of Tevet, Capricorn, the month of Tamuz, Cancer, and the month of Leo, Av. During these 3 months, people must, says the Zohar, be extra cautious. They can't just count on mere luck that their irresponsible behavior will come unnoticed, okay, and unpunished. Okay? Also, we know, since the month of Tammuz, for instance, in our case, is extra sensitive, the moment this month is starting, on Rosh Chodesh Tammuz today, that means everybody gets an injection of the power of Cancer. And what does it mean? We all become too sensitive, and if we fall into the danger of being busy with our own, what do I feel, that's not going to come out right. So during this month, we have to be extra cautious, to be sensitive to our own failures, emotional failures, which means when we find ourselves falling into self-pity, too much excitement, or too much depression, okay, that means I'm too busy focusing on my own desires, instead of being at service to others. And there's a lot of others to serve. Family, job. What is a job? Most people make a living by serving others. So you know what? Doing with extra zest. Be really caring when you do that, when you serve other people. And don't sit at home, just, do something for somebody else, which is the most powerful thing in the world to get you out of trouble. Okay? This is one of these amazing stories of Rabbi Shlomo Karlibach. That one day he wanders on the streets of Tel Aviv and he sees this guy cleaning the streets. And he looked at the guy, and the guy looks like an angel. An angel. He comes to him and says, "My dear brother, what's your secret? Tell me." "No, I'm just a simple street cleaner." No. "Where are you coming from?" And he says, "I'm coming from the village of Piaseczna, which was not far from Warsaw in Poland." So he says, "You're coming from Piaseczna? Did you know the Piaseczna rabbi?" And the man says, "I was his disciple. I was part of his community." Wow. He says, so how, tell me about it. He says, "I was a kid, but there's one thing that he said that I'll never forget, and that saved me, saved my life during all the concentration camps and the Holocaust." And the Piaseczna rabbi used to tell me, as a kid all the time, the biggest thing you can ever do is to do a favor to another person, to be of service to another person. So when I found myself, he said, in the concentration camp, and I realized that my parents on that day were burned at the crematorium, and I'm alone, and there's nothing else, I started to cry. I wanted to die. And then I remember what the rabbi told me. Do something good to somebody else. So instead of crying and thinking about committing suicide because my life was gone, I started to go around and look, how can I help people? You know what? In a concentration camp, there's so many people who need help. So I would spend the night going from one person to another, sitting with them, holding their hands, talking to them, giving them hope, and giving them the energy that I care for them, some stroke at this, and I learned just how I just was busy helping people, and that what carried me along during the terrible years of the war. Till the war was over and I survived because I was busy just doing good to others. That's a true story. So, if he could do it in the most horrible, darkest moments of humanity, no one can say, I have an excuse why I can't do good to others. I'm depressed, I'm upset, I didn't get the job, I'm missing some money, all of this stuff. He was a kid, 10 years old, in a concentration camp, realizing that his parents were killed that day and his life will never be like it used to be. And he's like just a number, not a human being. But then what saved him was doing something good for somebody else. That, in the moment we have a Cancerian moment, feeling sorry for ourselves, being upset, being depressed, being emotionally down, you want to get out of it, do something good for somebody else. That is the easiest way to connect to the light. And what is the light? That's good energy, that's healing, that's bliss, that's good fortune. Everything you can wish for is. And how do you get it? Simply by committing to do something good for somebody else. Now, a lot of people of the sign of Cancer, they do a lot for somebody else. But they don't do it as a spiritual venue. Okay? They do it because it's, like a mother nurturing. They have this push, this drive, obsession to help. And a lot of people of the sign of Cancer, when they help, it's like you think you're being suffocated. It's like they just don't let you breathe. So especially if you have a Cancer Jewish mother, oh my God, that could be devastating. Okay? Because you'll run away the first opportunity, far away as possible because you can't breathe. So, what's the problem with that kind of obsessive giving? It drains you because it's not sensitive. You do it because of a need, not because that the other person has a real need. So being sensitive means to help somebody according to their need, not according to your need. And the problem is that a lot of people of the sign of Cancer, when they do give so much, and they're so busy giving out of their own need, it's a selfish giving. It's a control mechanism in a way. The result is that the receiver of that obsessive giving feels suffocated, and the giver will always find himself cheated. Like, it's unfair. I gave so much. They never appreciate it. They become drained. Well, we know, we're learning it again and again, that the true giving is being said in the book of Leviticus, in Parashat Kedoshim. When it says over there, love others as you love yourself, I am God. Which means, don't love others because you need them to appreciate you. You're afraid of them rejecting you. That's a wrong reason to support and to care for others. That is a guarantee that you'll be drained. Why? People are people. They will never reciprocate properly, and you create yourself an idol the moment you care for somebody else for the purpose that he will reciprocate with you. People will never do that. So if you're trying to help people, this is commerce, which means, how many people love to be bought, right? I give you and I'm waiting for a thank you or a favor in return. How does that feel? The immediate reaction for most people, healthy people, will be, I don't need favors. Don't control me. I don't want to owe you. So that will create a reaction. But if I care for others because, as we said before in the previous story, we care for others because that's the only way to connect to the light of the Creator. That's not idol worshipping. That's really worshipping the light of Hashem. That's really doing the job we came to the world for. Whatever I'm doing it for one purpose and one purpose alone, which is to connect to the light of the Creator. Because that's my job on earth. What about helping other people? I'm helping other people because that's a way to connect to the higher being, to my calling. Why is that crucial? Says Rabbi Ashlag. Because you try in every system, in a government system, or in a company system, or a family, there are always people need the what's in it for me. Okay? Because that's our fuel. We need an incentive. Now, if the incentive is that people will love me and care for me if I care for them, it's like you always will feel it's unfair and being cheated because I gave so much, I never got anything in return. So what does it mean? People will give less and less and less and be more and more disappointed and drained, says Rabbi Ashlag. However, and therefore, any kind of a system that is built on people giving to each other, like communism, are basically doomed. Because people will be maybe excited in the beginning, but sooner or later, why should I work so hard? Anyway, I'm not going to get anything in return. On the other hand, if you turn it as a capitalist way, which means I am working hard, caring for people because my gain is my connection to God. So every time, says Rav Ashlag, I earn stronger connection to God by giving to others, I have an amazing incentive because this is a currency that is always precious and powerful, and that will give me enough strength to go on giving, sharing, and if it's my job, if it's a family relationship, if it's a social relationship. Why? Because I'm not addicted to anything physical, to any physical human beings. That's a big, big tikkun of every human being, but especially for Cancerians, because they have the tendency to help and to be there for others. But then, I know a lot of Cancerians like this, as they age, they become depressive. Why? They feel like life was not fair with them. I gave so much, I was always there for others, and the others never gave in return as much as I gave them. That's the moment you start from that place, you're just cheating yourself. It's not that life cheats you. You simply don't understand the rules of life. So you're cheating only yourself. Now, let's try to explain the sign of Cancer from another aspect, which is the aspect of the ruling planet, the moon. We discussed it a little bit. I want to go a little bit deeper than that. So, the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, that is related to Abraham the Patriarch, although it was transferred mouth to ear along the millennia till some 2,000 years ago. It says that Rabbi Akiva was the first one to write it down. And it says, Himlich ot taf, and God gave the rain to the letter taf, vekashar lo keter, and gave it a crown, vetzar bo, and formed with that power the moon in the general world. And Shabbat, the day of Shabbat, on the frame of time, the dimension of time, and vepe banefesh, and a mouth in the human body. Okay? So we know that the moon is connected to Sfirat Malchut. And like Sfirat Malchut, the moon has ups and downs. Also, like Sfirat Malchut, the moon, which is us, that's why in the Hebrew calendar, we count the months according to the moon. Why? Because like the moon, we don't have any light of our own. All the light that we have is what we reflect from the higher sphirot. The moon has no light of its own, it's only what it reflects from the sun. The moment we are aware that we have no light of our own, only the light that we reflect from God, that leads us to become spiritual. That's what the basic understanding of spiritual. Because the moment you think that whatever you have is yours, like, what a joke. What a joke. You know, how many people, they had a lot of money and then poof, they died. Right? And when they died, could they take it with them? They couldn't even make their home their mausoleum. Almost impossible. Correct? But they had a like multi-million-dollar house. Now, you have to leave it behind and to be buried in a little tiny plot. And that's it. Let go and go away. Okay? You know, when there is a funeral in an Israeli cemetery, I didn't see too much in outside Israel, but in Israel it's like in the end of the funeral, then the people who make the funeral, the Chevre Kadisha, the guys, they just say in front of everybody, here now, in front of the whole community, we fire you from every association you are a member in. Every company you have ownership of. It's like, you are fired. Let go and move on. It's over. Don't even think to come back because this chapter is over. Yeah, but I was like, you know, I had stakes in that company. I had shares in Apple, in Microsoft. No. It's like, you can't take those shares with you. The only shares you can take with you is what you shared with others. That stays with you forever. But on the physical realm, it's not yours. So, as Rabbi Ashlag is saying, you can have the lamp burning for hours and days. But the moment you turn off the light, poof, it's like it's never been there. We have to remember that. It's another consciousness that is very important, especially for Cancerians. Whatever we have is what we share unconditionally, like the moon. No strings attached. Okay, so the nicest or the greatest commentator of the Sefer Yetzirah, Harabad, Rabbi Avraham ben David, of Pusquires, in Spain. He lived some almost 1,000 years ago, but a little bit less. Okay, and he says like this. We know, first of all, that the combination of, or the permutation of the letter sequences that control the moon is the seventh of the seven of the Ana Bekoach. Shin Kufvav Tzadik Yutaf. This is the Shavatenu, Kabel, Ushma, Tzakatenu, Yodea Talomot. This one is having the ability to control the influence of the moon. Okay? V'sambo koach ha'iluch, and God gave him the power of hiluch, v'nesi'ah, traveling. Okay? Why? You see, the moon is like, it's traveling in the heavens, and it's the whole thing of the cycle, which is also part of traveling. You know, like a bus line. They didn't have bus lines at that time, but they had, ships and stuff. They go back and forth, like the moon, which means we have a cycle. So the moon is very, like the woman menstruation cycle, very much connected to the moon. Okay? Valicha bayam, the same thing, and sailing in the sea, and also sailing in the sea of wisdom. People of Cancer, they have tendency to connect to wisdom, which means to be very wise. Okay? Which means, if not the emotional instability, they could be amazing sages. It's an internal wisdom. If they can overcome the emotional instability, their wisdom should be appreciated by a lot. Okay? וקיבוץ עם, and gathering of people, כי שם יתקבצו כל המראות העליונות, because in the energy of the moon, all the upper sights, visions, would be accumulated. So people with, when you say lunatic, they also have abilities to see stuff that other people don't see. Okay? ולהיות צורות ההתרה כנועים לצורות עליונות בסוד וכבשוה, לפיכך יורה על הכניעה ובקשת רצון העליונים. It shows also about submission to the divine, which means people of the sign of Cancer should have a very strong tendency for spiritual or religious worship, submission to the divine. Again, the moment you submit to the divine, you exchange your slavery to the emotions. It's a choice to make. ולהיותה מתפשטת תורה על הנדוד ומיעוט המנוחה. And because it's expanding, it shows about journeys and lack of rest. Again, because there's always cycle. There's always, you can never sit there. It's not like, some planets that can sit in the same place for a long, long time. Okay? Still planets. But the moon is moving the fastest of all planets. Okay? Relatively to the earth, to us. ולהיותה מתקרבת ופעם מתרחקת, because sometimes it's closer, sometimes it's farther away. תורה פעמים על גאולה shows sometimes about redemption and sometimes about גלות, exile. אמנם תשיג חפציה, however, it's showing about achieving wants. Again, when we're talking about the moon is Sfirat Malchut. Look at the sky. Okay? What's the most visible objects? The sun and the moon. Okay? A person could go around without knowing where is planet Mars or Venus all his life, and they miss nothing. Right? But everyone knows where is the moon and where is the sun. Think about another thing. If you're talking about, let's say, the first month of the year, which is Nisan, the sign of Aries. It's ruled by Mars. But planet Mars is ruling also over Scorpio. The next one is Taurus, ruled by Venus. Venus is also the ruling planet of Libra. Then you have Mercury, which is the ruling planet of Sivan, which is Gemini. It's also the ruling planet of Virgo. So you notice that all planets, they are ruling planets of two signs. But when we come to the biggest, strongest, most powerful, the sun and the moon, they're ruling planets of only one sign each. What does it mean? If you notice, these two are also two of the three dangerous ones. What does it mean? Very, very intensive. It's all concentrated in 1 month. All the energy of the moon in 1 month. Again, we have extremity. Extreme. And you have extremity in Cancer and in Leo. Why? So much power and all in one place. Which means, of course, when you have so much power and all in one place, let's say you're driving a golf cart. What are the chances that you're going to be involved in a massive accident? It's like 5 miles an hour. It's like, you can't get into someone because it's too slow. But when you're driving a Ferrari 300 miles an hour, your chances not to create an accident are very slim. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay? So when you have so much intensity, you need very strong wisdom to control that. And of course, you don't let everybody get a driving license for something like this. But let's say somebody is born a Cancerian. Okay, you got the driving license. You have no other choice because that's going to be your life. Be careful in the turns. Because that's very dangerous. Okay? And that means Omnam tasik chafatzea, which means the ability to achieve whatever you want. When you have such an engine on one hand, on the other hand, you need to have more skill of managing something so powerful. Okay. ולבשורות והכתבים מתפארת ולשלוחים וליצי יושב ולהיותה פעמים בכיבוי אורה, תורה על חולאים מסוכנים ובכייה. Also, because the moon has sometimes dark, sometimes light, it can show about dangerous diseases. And we all know, when a person is emotionally unstable, this is calling for a trouble, especially diseases. And of course, we know the name of this sign, Cancer, okay? And that's also a name of the most scary disease, cancer. But where is cancer coming in? And so many researches have been done since the 80s of the previous century, previous millennium, okay? Showing and proving how strong is the connection between cancer and emotional instability. When a person is going through a real down emotionally, the first thing that is getting hurt is the immune system. If that depression lingers too much, that it's like the gates are open and any trouble is invited in. Could be germs, viruses, and cancer cells that on usual terms, the immune system destroys them before you know it. Now when the immune system went to sleep, those cancerian cells can start bloom and flourish, and when you're back to yourself, it could be too late. A lot of people, I remember research of the 80s that showed that most of the people with that diagnosed with terminal cancer, it is within 3 to 5 years after they went through an emotional breakdown, with the emotion going around with that feeling that I will never be happy ever again. There's no use to continue and go on living. So you see a lot of people when they lose a dear one, and then 3 to 5 years later they die from cancer. This is a very, very risk group, okay? So, of course, if a person has an emotional breakdown, that is inviting those diseases. That's what, remember, this book, this was written in the beginning, like almost 1,000 years ago. Okay? ותורה לפעמים על תכריכי המת, and shows many times about the shrouds of the dead. ופעמים על בריאות, and sometimes about health. לפי התחברותו לחיים או למוות, because it has the ability of the right and left, up and down, life or death. So when you are manic, then you connect to life. When you're depressed, then you connect to death. ולה הגשם מן חסדו אשר בשמיים, והשלג והברד והנחלים, that's about the precipitation, rain, hail, snow, and the water, because it's a water sign, correct? It's a water sign. It is the water sign. There's no sign that is 3 times fire. There's no sign 3 times water, air. But there's a sign 3 times water, which is Cancer. So again, it's about extreme. Okay, what else do we can find about it? I think this is enough about this stuff. So what else do we see? And we know also, if you look at the moon, you see the colors black and white. That's how the tendency to see black and white, not to be able to see the grays. Okay, so here we have another aspect that fortifies the tendency to look for what is right and what is the other thing. Now, what else do we have? Therefore, we know that if there is a risk, which means the month of Cancer shows about risk, therefore we have usually the weekly portions of the Torah being read during Tamuz which you are Chukat, Balak, and Pinchas, always they are the strongest portions in the Torah for healing. Why? Because God always gives you the remedy when you need it the most. So the moment you find the disease, look around, you will find the remedy. You know what it says, that poison ivy is very, very, can bring a lot of damage. Where do you find the antidote for the poisoning from the poison ivy? It's a plant that grows always next to the poison ivy. Okay? So the moment we find ourselves in trouble, look around, you'll find the remedy, it's there. Unless you're hysterical and you're so much into the darkness, it will be in front of you, you will never be able to see that. Now, there are two letters of the month. The letter for the sign of Cancer is the letter Chet. Now, Chet is not a very positive letter. Even the sound of it, if you know Hebrew, Chet is the same sound as sin. And that's why the Zohar says that the letter Chet, which looks like an N, like a gate, it's the gate to the dark side. That doesn't help too much for the sign of Cancer. And the letter Tav, which is a letter that created the moon. The letter Tav, says the Zohar, is the letter that signifies death. Why? Because A to Z, when you come to Z, which is in Hebrew is Taf, Aleph to Taf, you come to Taf, it means the end of the road. That's why it says in the Zohar, 30 days before somebody's death, the letter Tav appears on their forehead. Luckily, most people cannot see that. Otherwise, that would be really scary. Okay, people can take it right. So the letter Tav shows about the end of the road. But the Zohar teaches us, speaking about in Parashat Chukat, that the letter Tav, the way you write the letter Tav in a Torah writing, it's a letter Dalet, and adjacent to it is a letter Nun. The letter Dalet shows about what is called male judgments. What does it mean, male judgments? Dinim d'Dchora, which means judgments are being created when the male energy of the Creator floods our life, but we don't have a vessel that fits that light. So we get burnt. Okay? So that's a letter Dalet. The letter Nun, Nukba, female, that's a female judgment. Dinim de Nukba. These are the judgments coming from the vessel. And they're divided into two kinds of judgments. Lenient judgments that can cure all other judgments. This is a judgment that we activate when we take responsibility. When we tell ourselves, cut it, stop, discipline. Instead of going crazy by hating or eating whatever, take the limitation, put the end, make the judgment a healthy judgment, and bring a limitation to the craziness. So that's lenient judgment. Okay, the harsh judgment, we don't want it, is when we take too much, desire to receive for the self alone. Then there is the rule of the Tzimtzum that says whenever we receive light that we don't deserve, the vessel will have to stop it and create a curtain, a blockage. That could be that you can't do anything anymore. You get sick, you lose your money. You know, something stops you on the road. You get blocked. Or final death. That's a harsh judgment. Okay? All of them in the letter Tav. So judgment is not always bad. Judgment is what saves us, because the moment we take control over our emotions and we stop the flow, we stop the journey, and we change the direction from down to up, from just receiving to taking care, from just being reactive to being responsible and caring and sharing and loving, that comes out of judgment, because we say stop, we take the control, and we turn the ship around. So that's a healthy judgment. So you see, within the letter Tav, you have the disease and you have the cure. You have the judgment that kills, or the cure that will be the antidote to death. The letter Chet, how do you write, according to Rabbi Zakloria, write the letter Chet in the Torah? You write Vav and Zayin, and you make a connection like a roof that connects the two. But miraculously, Vav is the letter for the month of Taurus, and Zayin is the letter for the month of Gemini. What do we have in Taurus and Gemini? We have the journey of the counting of the Omer. Which means, if we are working hard enough on our spiritual journey in the counting of the Omer between Passover and Shavuot, when we arrive to Tamuz, we have already the Chet, which is the combination of the Vav and the Zayin, as one. And if you look at the name Tamuz, the name Tamuz, the name of the month, Tam, Vav Zayin, the completion of Vav Zayin. That's what Tamuz, if you divided it to, Tam, Vav Zayin. Which means, if you worked hard during the counting of the Omer, you will see the reward during the month of Tamuz. If not, then it changes. Tam reversed to Met, the death of the Vav Zayin. And that's why, again, Tamuz could be a dangerous month, diseases, stuff like this, and because all the emotionality, lack of control, lack of spirituality, lack of responsibility, no freedom because we are subjugated to our whims and desires and judgment and stuff like this, that will bring to a month of Tammuz that you have to work much, much, much harder. So basically, I think we covered a lot about the month of Tammuz and the sign of Cancer, and hopefully we'll have an amazing, beautiful, powerful month. And just to remember, it's not by mistake that you have the 3 most terrible, hardest weeks of the year, starting on the 17th of Tammuz, the day of the sin of the golden calf, and finish on the 9th of Av, the day of the sin of the spies, 3 weeks later, and the destruction of the first temple, the second temple, and many other, the Spanish expulsion, all of that, the Tisha B'Av. So these 3 weeks are most of them in Cancer, which, like in the beginning of the month, we have to be really careful about not to fall into too much emotionality and negativity. But after the 17th of Tammuz, it's becoming even more dangerous that really we have to build protection shields by being very, very careful and very spiritual. However, negative can always turn into positive. That's our job on this planet. So with that note, thank you so much and have a great month.
Thank you very much.